Nestled in the serene and remote town of Caliente, Nevada, is the Caliente Hot Springs Motel. Long been known for its therapeutic hot mineral waters, but to many travelers it offers a tranquil escape, a place to rejuvenate in its warm, soothing baths. However, for over a decade, this quaint motel became infamous for something far darker, a secret venue for underage marriages, orchestrated by the Fundamentalist church known as the FLDS. Let's explore the motel's role in these clandestine practices, the sinister leadership of Warren Jeffs, and the broader implications of these events. Well, hey folks, welcome to Profiling Evil, your go-to crime channel where we dive deep into the criminal investigative process and we try to provide educational information on the fascinating world of crime solving. Now, if you're passionate about the psychology of crime, you've come to the right place. And before we jump into today's case, I hope you'll take just one moment and hit that like and subscribe button. Please give us a thumbs up because it really does help us with the algorithms out there. And don't forget, make sure you're getting the notifications on all of our videos just like this one. I'm here just east of Caliente. In fact, I decided to not film in the town of Caliente because you know what? I just wasn't very comfortable today and I was pretty dang disgusted when I drove by that motel for the first time in my life. Caliente is a small town located approximately 150 miles north of Las Vegas, Nevada. It is surrounded by rugged landscape and dotted with natural hot springs. It exudes kind of a rustic charm. It's known historically as a railroad town. Caliente has a population of less than 1,000 people, making it quiet and seemingly unremarkable. Yet this remote place made it the ideal location for leaders like Warren Jeffs, who sought to avoid the scrutiny of authorities in Utah and Arizona, where most of the sect's followers reside. The FLDS is an offshoot of the mainstream Latter-day Saint faith that broke away in the early 20th century over the issue of plural marriage or polygamy. Now, the mainstream Latter-day Saint faith renounced polygamy in 1890, but the fundamentalists continued the practice of polygamy as their core tenet of the faith, even though they were all excommunicated from the mainstream religion for doing so. Warren Jeffs, this self-proclaimed prophet of the FLDS, yielded unwielding power over his followers, everything from property to spirituality, and the FLDS became increasingly secretive on the issue of practices including forced marriages of underage girls. The Caliente Hot Springs Motel, back then, now under new ownership, became a pivotal junction for the FLDS covert activities. According to the investigators and former members of the sect, Warren Jeffs and other leaders used room number 15 of this motel to conduct secret weddings, ceremonies involving underage girls and older males in the group. Carolyn Jessup, a former FLDS member who once managed the hotel, revealed that the weddings often took place in clusters. In fact, she said there were as many as 10 weddings per day. The FLDS would book the motel during slow business periods of time, like right now in the winter, ensuring privacy by leaving other rooms vacant. Guests and staff members were kept completely unaware of the proceedings, with church members taking great pains to maintain secrecy. Jessup described how the ceremonies were simple and austere, devoid of typical wedding trappings like flowers or unity candles, etc. Instead, the events centered around the religious rituals and vows that tied these young girls to their older husbands. I want to share, driving into town today, my feelings as I saw this motel for the first time. Let's watch. I wanted to record my thoughts as I roll into the town of Caliente, Nevada. This is the first time I've ever seen this place, and I thought it would be interesting to just kind of capture my thoughts as I go through. We just passed the Hot Springs Motel where Warren Jeffs would take the child brides to be married. And again, remember, this is a guy who had 87 wives, but most of them in the later years before his arrest were children. So as we come into town, you can see it's a I don't know, a little tiny place on the map. And we're about, I don't know, a third of a mile from the hotel that Jeffs would use. It's under renovation right now, but I'm going to go in and try to get in and look around and get a good sense of it. In fact, that's the place right there as we drive by, and we'll cut back and come back into it. So imagine you're a young polygamous bride, you're being taken to that dump by an old man who's decided that whoever the God is that he believes in wants him to be married to you. Just absolutely disgusting. But here's the approach coming into it. Kind of a unique area. And again, hopefully we'll be able to walk around and get some imagery in the area here. I try to often think of the children, and we're unable to get in, darn it. So I'm going to put the drone up to get a little better look of the area. Warren Jeffs' reign as the FLDS prophet was marked by an escalation in the church's already controversial practices. He controlled, as I mentioned kind of earlier, every aspect of his followers' lives, from their choice of spouse to their choice of having a baby to their daily routines. Jeffs, obsessed with obedience and control, extended to arranging the marriages, these marriages between underage girls and older men, most often. In fact, a young woman had to say, "I'm now ready to be put into the pool, Warren," and he would decide who that young girl would be assigned to. It just disgusts me. It coerced these girls with threats of eternal damnation if they didn't follow the rules. Now, one of the most infamous cases was that of a 14-year-old girl, referred to in court documents as Jane Doe. And while her name has come out, Jane Doe number 4, I'm going to just leave it at Jane Doe number 4. In court documents, it was recorded that Jeffs forced her, threatening her with the loss of her salvation if she refused to marry an older man. In order to recreate what was testified in that courtroom, I want you to kind of envision this scenario. The courtroom fell silent as the young woman offered her testimony, her words lingering in the air like a weight too heavy to bear. Her face, streaked with tears, bore witness to the years of pain that she had endured, the betrayal. Yet, despite the horror she recounted, there was an undercurrent of defiance in her voice, a glimmer of the resilience that had carried her through the ordeal and now emboldened her to speak. I think that's amazing the way that was written. Her story was not hers alone, though. It was the story of countless girls and countless women who were trapped within the confines of the FLDS. Their lives dictated in every way by men who claimed to wield divine authority. In this insular world, the silence was both a weapon and a shield. A shield that allowed Warren Jeffs to maintain his control. Speaking out was unthinkable for most, not only because of the fear of emotional retribution, but because of the deeply ingrained belief that defiance was a sin, that you would be cast out and never get to heaven. But the silence was beginning to crack. The young woman's testimony was a powerful catalyst. inspiring others to come forward and tell their story as well. As more victims shared their experiences, a chilling pattern emerged. A pattern of coercion, abuse, and systematic exploitation that reached deep into the fabric and heart of the FLDS doctrine. For Warren Jeffs, the walls were closing in, and the FLDS's darkest secrets were being exposed to the world. Victims, like number 4, bore testimony of the harrowing life they lived under his rule. Again, forced marriages, sexual abuse, the psychological torment of being told that their suffering was God's will. I don't know what God that Warren Jeffs believed in, but I don't think it's the same God that you and I believe in. The trial was not just about Warren Jeffs, though. It was about the entire system that he and perhaps his forefathers had built. Prosecutors did a great job arguing that his actions were not just those of a misguided religious wacko, but they were of a man who used faith as a weapon to control and exploit the members of that church. Now, defense attorneys, like they must do, argued that the greater FLDS membership was being framed as an attack on the religious freedoms that they should be enjoying. And the strategy, it failed. It failed overwhelmingly as evidence of Jeffs' crimes came forward. In the end, Warren Jeffs was convicted of multiple counts of sexual assault, and he was sentenced to life in prison. For his victims, it was a moment of vindication, I guess, but it's also a reminder of what they lost as a result of this man and this belief system. Now, the good news is Warren Jeffs will never get out of jail, even though his members today continue to claim that the prison walls are going to tumble and he's going to walk free. But the scars of his actions will run deep, and the path to healing is going to be long and arduous. These kids have a long pathway ahead of them. These adult women have a long pathway, and perhaps many of the men have a long pathway ahead of them as they reconcile all this. Now, that young woman who testified against Jeffs, she would go on to rebuild her life. Now, though the memories of her ordeal will never fade, she has become a symbol of strength and courage, and her willingness to speak out inspires others to do the same. Their stories are a rally cry for justice, and their stories shine a light on the hidden abuses that force all of us to confront this dark side of unchecked power. It was then and continues today to be a light of freedom for them. Now, this little place of Caliente, just to the west of me, it stands as a symbol of the lengths of which cults will go to keep their practices hidden. Cults work in secrecy, and this motel stands as an example of how nondescript the locations of abuse might be, ultimately blending seamlessly into the sleepy townscapes of places like this. And I want to just say once again that the Caliente Motel and hot spas is under new management now, under new ownership even. But keep in mind, as we think about this case, cults like to work behind closed doors. Transparency isn't a trademark of a cult. Those child brides arrived in silence, their faces pale with fear. Their grooms, often older, radiated, I would think, some unsettling mixture of pride and entitlement, a calm demeanor that was masking the cruelty of their actions. Cults are not just ritual organizations, though. They are tightly woven webs of control. And they all seem to have a leader at the center of the web leading all of the decisions. The leader decides who can marry, who can have children, and who will be worthy of remaining in the cult. Oh, that they all could be found unworthy and kicked out of the cult would be my hope and dream. But let's not mistake that for the women of the FLDS, at that time, there was no escape. They were raised to believe that their worth lay in their obedience and their ability to bear children. Education was minimal, focused almost entirely on religious doctrine, and any knowledge of the outside world was dismissed and considered dangerous and sinful. This isolation ensured that the girls had no frame of reference, no understanding of their rights, and no way to imagine a life beyond the confines of the community. In the case of the FLDS and Warren Jeffs, though, justice did occur. And it continues to occur with the recent conviction of another self-proclaimed prophet who said that Warren Jeffs was dead and came to him in a vision and told him he was now the prophet of the FLDS, a guy named Samuel Bateman. Bateman was recently convicted to a 50-year plus sentence, and thankfully we'll never hear from him again, I hope. And here's kind of the good and the bad news. The FLDS members in Short Creek fled the area for the most part. What was once 13,000 people left the church under Warren Jeffs' directions and settled in multiple places across the country that I've identified in the story map, and you can find the link to that down below. But keep in mind that this thing is continuing on as Warren Jeffs continues to push out revelation after revelation from inside the prison. And members of that faith continue to believe he's a prophet of their God. The clandestine nature of the FLDS activities in Caliente reflects the broader strategy of evading legal scrutiny. The remoteness of the town and the lack of awareness among local authorities allowed the FLDS to operate with impunity for years. Remember Carolyn Jessup that I talked about? She escaped the sect in 2003, highlighted the psychological toll on the young girls forced into marriage, and she described the trauma that they endured, not only from the marriages themselves, but also from the constant pressure to conform to church strict doctrines of plural marriage. The story of the Caliente Hot Springs Motel serves as a chilling reminder of how the secrecy and isolation efforts of these cults can enable abuse. Under the guise of religious freedom, Warren Jeffs and the FLDS exploited vulnerable individuals, perpetuating a cycle of control and victimization. The events that unfolded in Caliente are not just a local tragedy, but a warning about the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of vigilance in protecting the most vulnerable members of our society. If you ever make your way north of Las Vegas, Nevada, and make it to the community of Caliente, keep in mind that, again, the current ownership of the motel have no ties to the FLDS or its dark history. I tried to get into the motel today during renovation, and the manager very curtly dismissed me and told me to go away. So maybe they're just a little bit tired of all the attention at the hotel because of the FLDS. But folks, if you ever get to Caliente, make sure you stop and you soak in those thermal waters that bubble below the surface at the Caliente Motel. But think about the possibility that crimes might continue to be bubbling below the societal window that we all enjoy. Remember, you can find Profiling Evil on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you like audio podcasts, please check out Profiling Evil's audio podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. And if you'd like a little more information and dig a little deeper into Profiling Evil, check out our website at profilingevil.com. And while you're there, sign up for our digital newsletter, the BOLO. It stands for Be on the Lookout, and the only way you're going to get the BOLO is by signing up at profilingevil.com. And while you're there, if you have an interest in understanding cults and cult behavior, purchase my book, Deceived, an investigative memoir of the Zion Society cult. In that, I review how cult leaders seek out, groom, and recruit people into cults, how they maintain control over those people in the cult, how they try to keep them from getting away, but most importantly, how people can escape cult behavior and coercive control. Check out the book, and if you live in the United States and you buy it through Profiling Evil, I'll sign the book and I'll ship it to you for free. If you live anywhere else in the world, go to Amazon.com and pick up the book through Amazon. Hey, thanks for your support of Profiling Evil. And from this incredible spot just east of where Warren Jeffs abused so many children, thank you. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.